everyone, and welcome to Spoilers, obviously.
Spoilers, obviously. That's
I'm
the show, right?
Yeah, well, now that you spoiled it. So yeah, I'm your host, Joel, and with us, as always, our wonderful, amazing Moses Moon.
That's me, everybody.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. I can't complain. Life is interesting more or less every other day.
Nice. How's it? So in Israel right now, it's Chag Purim. How's it?
Yes, Purim Sameach.
How's that going with for you?
I didn't really celebrate. However, I watched some TikTok videos of soldiers celebrating and doing it like the traditional way, where they're like basically sitting by their mortars or tanks or machine guns and like reading out the story of Esther. But then every time they say Haman, they like launch a mortar or like rattle off
Nice.
a chain of machine guns, and it's beautiful. I'm like, oh, it's somehow so poetically appropriate.
Nice. That's awesome. I don't know why I don't know why we didn't ever do that when I was in the army. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, it's
It
enjoyable.
is what it is. Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't really celebrate it over here. I have really nothing to do. So
Yeah.
that's
I mean, yeah.
that's pretty much it on my end.
Oh, you don't have a synagogue in Texas? What are you talking about?
No, yeah, we do. I just didn't go.
You guys are really great Jews.
Baptist.
It's just called Jewish guilt for you, fellow
Yeah.
listeners out there.
I'm okay. Anyways, shall we get into our episode for today?
Yeah. What are we talking about?
So, as you guys know, we have been MIA for like a year. And
it's been a while.
It's been a while. And we decided we want to talk about this subject, which is Masters of the Air. Now, it is a TV show. It is from Apple TV, whoever is interested. And because it's a TV show, we're not going to do like one episode per week. And we're gonna do all 9 episodes because all 10 episodes, 9, 10, whatever. Because 9 episodes, because the season is already over with.
Yeah.
And so we are a bit late to the game, but we are going to do the entire season.
Yeah.
On this episode.
A worthy watch.
And yeah, we will continue on from there. Anyways, so like I said, Masters of the season 1 and the only season. It is, like I said, on Apple TV. It is based on a true story, true events. And so you have like 3 TV shows from the same
Playtone Records, aka Studios.
Yeah.
Which is run by Tom Hanks.
Exactly.
Owned and run by.
So out of the 3, so the 3 are Band of Brothers, The Pacific, and this one, Masters of the Air. All 3 of them take place in World War II. And you can very feel and get the vibe of this TV show of the other 2. You get the vibe very strong, and I very much loved it and appreciate it. Although, between the 3, which one is your favorite?
Well, it's interesting. Like watching them as each one is a different experience. However, I think that Band of Brothers runs the most cleanly in terms of endearing us to the characters and following a more or less consecutive storyline. So, and also for nostalgic purposes, it was the first Nun that was ever seen. It was really great. So I really love it. Pacific just kind of had a good beginning and then fumbled in narrative consistency in terms of instead of following one group around, we were following individuals in their different jobs around, and that got confusing. And then like, let's say halfway through, we started following new people, and it was like really disorienting. I mean, one could argue it fits the narrative, and because the Pacific Theater was really brutal and chaotic. However, just as a clean story, it's my least favorite.
Really.
And then this one was just top notch, different, totally different approach in terms of like, now we're not on the ground anymore, and we're not with fighter pilots, we're with a bombing squad, which that American bombing squad of all that, which was very different than their tactics versus the English and so on and so forth. So it was very, very unique and like really brutal. And the story was very clean and easy to follow. I have one nitpick with it, but I can get into that later. However, to me, this almost equivalently as good as Band of Brothers, so it's right up there with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That is completely opposite from my point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So between the three, I would say the Pacific is my absolute favorite. I felt more connected to it and more realism. The brutality, the 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 personality of each character and each character with another character, like the bond and all that. I felt more connected to it and how honest it was. And
Yeah.
then Band of Brothers, I felt like I don't know, like also the quality for Band of Brothers is really grainy. So
Rainy.
yeah, because it's not it looks kind of old, like it came in the early 2000s. So
I see.
I don't know. So the Band of Brothers, well, it takes like 3 or 4 episodes until we actually go into battle, and that
Mhm.
is basically 30 to 40 hours because each episode is 1 hour. No, how did I get to 40? It's about 3 to 4 hours, like 3 to 4 hours until we actually go finally into battle. It's a very slow paced show. It's a fantastic show, but it's very slow paced.
Mm.
And so that's why it's my, in the middle. This show, Masters of the Air, I absolutely loved, but at the same time, I felt very disconnected from all the characters.
Mm.
I felt like, you know, I'm very used to being on ground when it comes to watching all these, war movies. So
Yeah.
all the war movies are basically on ground. So I'm very used
Yeah.
to that. So I very much, felt I'm disconnected from the battle itself because I'm up in the sky. I'm not in battle.
Mm.
So I felt like really, really disconnected. But later on in the show, they're finally in ground. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, you're finally in ground. So this is something I can more relate to. But most of you or all of you are prisoners. So not much is really happening. So
Mm.
it was a really good show, but I felt when it comes to the overall, nothing really happened. The
That's interesting because
they
I felt like in the Pacific, character development was weaker in terms of like, because I watched the Pacific just before I watched this,
Mhm.
and the just some of the like what you said, nothing happens, like is the brutality in the show was excellent, but then like because we keep following people around and like leaving people behind, we come back and then they're not, like there's
Mhm.
there's just a few things that are that vary, but the point is like yeah, it is definitely removed. Like you're not used to seeing aerial combat, let alone bombing aerial combat, which is
Mhm.
like really insane. But I thought they did a really good job at like showing how brutal that was. Like that this was like your flying fortresses are basically a death run unless you have God's hand over you, because and that was because the first half was before the P-51s started escorting them,
Mhm.
and so you have to like show that these guys have grit and courage, going not only preparing and waiting for enemy fighters, but also for just eating shit and eating the flak guns from down below in order to get to their targets and stuff. And I don't know. So I have a special place for let's say war prisoners of war movies, I guess. So like
Hmm.
The Great Escape is something I grew up with.
Oh yeah.
And the prison that they went to was just after The Great Escape's Great Escape, or just during.
I
Um
that's interesting that you mentioned that because I did see a video on YouTube that someone mentioned that basically this the part of this show when they are prisoners takes place the same time of the movie The Great Escape,
yeah,
which
just nearing the end of it, which is really
yeah,
cool.
which basically shows us like these are basically the same people. I know if
Well, this
they
is the
if
American side. A lot of the other ones were more the British, but
yeah.
still super cool. And just that little Easter egg. And if you know that, like when I kind of guessed it when
Hmm.
they're like when they went down, I'm like, oh, they're probably gonna go to a prisoner of war camp. And they're like, well, it is the time and season. I wonder. And then like the end episode where they pull into the camp and give its name, I'm like, there you go.
Yeah, no,
I
that
thought it
was
was a cool touch.
a cool touch. For me, so okay, so before I'm debating how should I do this because we kind of
Mm,
going all over the place. But I'll quickly say what I wanted to say. Um, for me, I felt like this show is based on true events, but I felt
mm,
like how true is this? Like, because you have, the people who, flying the plane and all that, and then, something happens, or they die, or they're now, have to they abandon the planes, and now they need to survive on their own. On some
yeah.
occasions, we saw they just died. The enemy killed them.
Yeah.
Other occasions, we saw them being captured and they're now prisoners of war. Another occasion, like, oh, well, we see the rebellion civilians over here who want to go against the Nazis and they're recruiting me as a spy to join them. It's like, how how much is all
That's
of
not what
this
happened.
true?
They didn't recruit them as a spy. They said you'd be considered a spy,
Yeah, you'd be considered a spy, but you will
which
help.
means you'd be executed.
Yeah, if they catch them,
Yeah,
as long as
exactly. You'll be executed as a spy.
exactly. And in the meantime, he's like helping them to rebel. And like when I saw all of this, like how much all of this is true. It's like I find it very like what are the odds? But at the same time, back then the odds are very high. So I don't know. I felt like a bit disconnected that from not I don't know if disconnected, but too good to be true. I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't know. This is what I kind
I
of
can
got.
understand that, where like it seems circular, like, oh, you crash and you get flown back to base and then get to do it all over again.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think it was such a different take, like because that is the life that of pilots. It wasn't always like that, but like
Mm.
you die most likely die, but then like for the few, and these were based off of true people, like people who experience these things, like
Mhm.
Crosby or uh the rest of the characters. I forget their name. Like these were true events, and some of them really fantastic, which is why because World War II is filled with crazy stories
Yeah, it
like
does.
that, where like the impossible seemed to happen. um but that's okay. And you're right, like I was agreeing with you earlier that like it's a real disconnect from like knowing the story from the ground. Like if you watch a World War II movie now, you kind of know, or more or less like you're familiar with the history, and you're like, okay,
Hmm.
you have some expectations of like what's going to happen, what siege, what battle, like, or what battle it's leading up to.
Yeah.
Whereas with the air, we're a little bit unfamiliar. And like for me, the endearment to the characters was through show don't tell, which is something that they did in Band of Brothers. As a told, like the Pacific wasn't so much like info dump about the people and their lives. They did show, but they felt a little more rushed. Whereas like both Band of Brothers, we went saw them through basic training, and we saw them become the guys who they were, which is prior to the fighting, like a dance, if you will. The climax happened near the end.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas here we got to show. we didn't get to see them through basic training, but we got to know them through their actions. Like the first shot is them flying into Norway and landing a plane, and we get to meet their technical skill and like get to see some of their bar culture and like the guys behind the scenes prior to them actually going on a mission, and they're like meeting what it is. Like the first episode, like one of the guys goes ahead to like prep there, and he starts running missions prior to his buddies joining him, and he's like he doesn't know if he should how he should tell the guys what it's like. And then by the time we get to that mission, when the guy's like, why didn't you tell me what it was like? And you see that like these planes are barely held together, that this is the shit show that we're in the run for, and this is like the stakes. And I thought that was, and then you get to see them unwind afterwards and so on. And we slowly learn a little bit more about each of the guys through the episodes. Like I thought it was well done. Like I said, the only nitpick that I had was like we switched to looking at the B-51 pilots, like the last two episodes in. I would have liked them introduced earlier, but I was already invested in the other guys, so I was like, okay, random choice, but okay, we're at the end anyways. Cool. Because again, like you said, there is a little bit of like not much happened, but at the same time, like because difference between the air and the ground is you're seeing the advancement of the Allied troops and where it's going to end. Whereas from the air, we're running missions until it's over.
Yeah, that's I think that's why I felt like nothing really happened because like you just said, like on ground we see the advancement, in the air we don't really see the advancement. And they also tell us like everyone who like does their mission, you have 25 missions. After that, you're basically released from the army. And it's interesting why 25, I don't know, but we do see a few people who like almost get 25 and then they die, or do the 25 like, yay, I'm getting the fuck out of here, I'm never coming back. Or they do 25 like, yeah, but I have nothing left for me at home. I'm used to
But
this
that
life.
is the story of a
I want to
soldier.
continue.
And or he finds out that he finishes the 25 and then like they extended it for the rest of the guys, and he's like, that's not fair, and he reenlists. But I mean, like, it's a different thing. Like you and I were both like foot soldiers, whereas
I'm a mechanic.
Said, you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
the thing is, I mean, even from the mechanical point of view, like you could see some things, but you weren't an air mechanic. Their whole thing. So on one side, I think it's cool for people like us to see what it was like for the air guys and like Air Force, and like, and for me, like it just like I always had respect for them, but like especially in World War II, especially knowing that like your missions were borderline suicide all the time.
Yeah.
The grit and the like a lot of the episodes nearing the middle showed like the hesitancy to go back into the cockpit, or and the different resolves of men. It was very psychological. I thought it was great.
Yeah, no, they did an amazing job. The acting was amazing. I did just remembered the mechanic thing. In every movie or TV show, they don't really show you the mechanics, or like really put focus on them. And over here they did, and I absolutely loved it because everyone's like, oh, combat, like look what they go through, like how important they are. But at the same time, we have our main character says like, without them, we are nothing. Like, we like here we come back with this broken plane. They're gonna fix it for us so we can go back in. If we didn't
It's
have
funny watching them dialogue, and like they're like, oh, this is what you bring back to me, or like, yeah, you have to have this fixed, and like, oh shit, or that one scene, forget what episode it is, but like literally doing a fix as they're like, we need to take off, and there were like and then a few planes in queue, and the mechanic's like, I got this, and he's like in there while the plane's moving, and he's like, you know how critical he is at this point. You're like, oh fuck, like this is, he doesn't do it, these guys are dead, because we know the stakes. And what can happen, and then he fixes it and hops out while the plane's about to take off, and that was like dope. That was dope.
Yeah, no, absolutely amazing. No, it shows us a teamwork is
Makes
not
the dream work.
it makes a dream work. But no, a teamwork is is so big, even for the people who are not with you in battle. It shows that, like, even with the people who help you get into battle, that is a part of your team. That, without them, really, like, you could have lost the war.
And one
And,
thing I liked showing, which was more character building for everybody, was the waiting. Like they'd
Mhm,
show a lot of like, okay, so we've spent time with the guys in the air as they're getting the shit kicked out of them, or they've been able to deliver their bombs and so on and so forth. But then
mhm,
like the the moments where they would pan back to the base while they're waiting for them to return, and we don't know who's returned, or a mission that they did off screen, and we're waiting for we get the tension of like, wait, who just went? And
yeah,
we start knowing the names of each plane by this time. And so like when we start hearing the numbers and like understanding it, like there's lots of cool stuff they did, like stuff like that, or the briefings where we as the audience got to be with them and it was spoken in a way that we kind of understood the mass event of it, or like
mhm.
how much they're getting side shafted, and then like to know like from then and at the end to come back and to see what's left is mind boggling.
Yeah, no, they put a lot of the suspense, and I absolutely loved it. The show, like, they know how to get the audience. They know how to capture you in every possible way, and they did an amazing job. I just preferred Pacific more. And
Fair enough. One thing that
and
was different, or I don't know, the European, like between like the European theater's been done a lot, and Pacific was really cool because they showed
mhm,
how intense the Pacific was and how the mentalities of like facing the Japanese versus, we're used to seeing Nazis more so than the Japanese and how intense they were. Like there's plenty of stuff on Pearl Harbor or
yeah,
uh like the coming up to Hiroshima, but we don't really get too much. Like the land of our father, flags of our fathers, or the other one, which was really good. But but regardless, like the scene in Pacific where he's like the one you can see them losing it and like throwing stones into open skulls and stuff, and you're just like,
yes,
oh.
yeah, amazing, beautiful. But don't worry, audience. We will have more Japanese story time for you guys later, and by that I mean
Yeah.
Shogun.
Probably one of the best series out there. Now,
Yeah,
that one, well, we'll get into that when we get into it, but
yeah.
yeah.
There is a scene in this show, and it really it didn't bother me. I very much loved it, but at the same time, it's like, it made me think, how would I have been in that situation? So
Mhm.
we have a plane that's about to crash. The captain, the
Oh
pilot,
yeah.
says to everyone, get the fuck out. Everyone gets the
Bail,
fuck
bail,
out.
bail.
Bail, bail, bail. Everyone bails at the same time. Okay. I think there was two planes crashing, if I'm not mistaken. One plane, you have a guy who is stuck and he can't get out.
He's in the turret gun at the back.
Exactly. And his
Yeah.
friend is trying to save him. And he realizes, I can't save you. And if I try to save you, I will die. So it's basically both of us die, or only you die. This is a situation. That is
Yeah.
plane number one. Plane number two, you have the captain, like, everyone bailed. You have the captain and the co-pilot. The co-pilot is dying. He's like 99% dead. And the captain
Yeah.
is like, no, I can save him. I all I need to do is land this plane properly and I can save him. But the captain told everyone to bail. Everyone bailed, and the captain tries to land the plane, but obviously fails and blows up, and both of them die.
Yeah.
And this shows me such a beautiful thing. You have a soldier dealing with a soldier, and a captain dealing with a co-pilot. Like, a captain always don't goes down with his ship, kind of situation. But I was like,
Mhm.
okay, if I was in their shoes, in plane number one, which I know I can't save this person, it's or both of us die or he dies, what would I do? Would I, save myself, or, try to save him until I die? and that's plane number one. And plane number two, I know the co-pilot is basically dead. Am I going to try to save him, even though I do land the plane, he's still most likely dead? Should I try to save him, or should I try to save myself? And personally, for me, in both scenarios, is like one is easier than the other. If I were the pilot, I would save myself, hands down. The guy
I mean,
is,
we get plenty of examples of that where like especially near the last episode before they become POWs, the plane
yeah,
gets shot up and he tries to hold it out as long as he can. And then everyone bails and he gets out, but he sees one of the guys who got shot, like in one of the gun turrets.
yeah,
And he checks on him, but the guy's gone. And he's like,
yeah.
all right. And he bails. But like, and yeah, I'll give my comments on what you're talking about after. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. So yeah, in the pilot scenario, I would save myself hands down. In the soldier scenario, I probably would do the same, but like the feeling of knowing like you could have saved him, but at the same time you couldn't. And I remember talking about this with my brother on the Hebrew podcast, and he said like the guy who was stuck, he's a complete asshole, and he deserved to die. Like what? Why? It's like, why do you think he deserved to die? It's like, okay, look at it at this point of view. You know you're stuck, and your friend cannot save you. You're basically telling him, stay here and die with me rather than go save yourself. It's like, yeah, you know what? You're all right. You know, he tried. He
Maybe
tried. He tried to
he
save him.
tried. The first thing he tried, which
He
is one
tried.
thing.
If he wouldn't have tried, it would have been a different scenario. But he did try, and they both saw, you're stuck here. I can't save you. The thing is, he kept telling like, no, stay here and save me, which makes
that's
the
just
guy,
panic.
yeah, obviously panic, but makes the guy a complete asshole. Like you,
It's not as like have you? It's difficult saving a drowning
it
person.
is. It is.
Like it's like in both scenarios, both plane 1 and 2, both are in panic. One
Exactly.
is emotionally panicked and like can't get a grip on reality and the situation, and he tries to do the noble thing and he dies. And the other one is like the guy who has the ability to save himself does so, but at the cost of having to disengage from a human life, which he tried his best what he could do, which didn't seem like much, but like what can you do in that circumstance? But that's going to live with you until you forgive yourself. And that's, I mean, we see him walk through that a little bit.
Yeah. So that's that. What was your commentary that you wanted to say?
More or less that, just the fact that they're both panic scenarios, and it's like, but we are given many opportunities to see how different people are handle it. And also another aspect of plane 1 is that those we get to know the captains and the co-pilots pretty well. By this time we're invested and we know who these guys are, and we're like, can he save him, can he not? We're invested, and it's like, it's a loss. And so I mean, again, they're pretty historically accurate. I mean, I'm sure some things are taken off for granted, but more so than less, like that happened, and I'm sure that happened in real life too. Like as much as we saw the diversity of how people handled getting shot down, we saw many examples of what it could have been like, and it all felt extremely realistic. And the turret gunners were fucked. Like from the first episode, we saw like if you didn't have your oxygen and or like proper heating, like you'd freeze up. Like guy had frostbite hardcore.
Yeah, it actually took me several episodes also for Adam to explain that to me, because I didn't realize it at first. Like the guy's like, "Oh my god, it burns," and it's like, okay, but why is it turning black? Why is it like not like what's happening over here? But then he told me like, dude, that's frostbite. Like, oh my god, I didn't realize that. But yeah,
they're so high in the altitude. It's cold. It's cold, man.
I totally missed that when he told that to me.
And that's like one of the things I like about the show. Like again, we're in World War II. It's a whole different scenario than what we got in like normal Air Force today. But like the difficulties and the struggles the pilots had to deal with, especially the bombers, was a total Like it was a total hell show. Like, yeah, you get to go back to the bar and like have a nice place to sleep, but like you have to have the grit to get up to go into the air every day, and that's what you're gonna face. You're gonna get limbs blown off, or not sure if your plane's gonna go down, or like it's a whole different game. It's cleaner, more or less, than the grit of having to sleep in ditches and things of that nature, but it just as noble in my opinion.
It is. I'm not saying it's not noble. I just realized the
No, you're saying
chances.
they're pieces of shit. You hate them.
Fuck those motherfuckers. um, I just realized as you were saying all that, they probably have it even, I don't know if tougher, but the chances of survival. Take a soldier who's on ground, let's say got shot in the in the rib area. The chances of him surviving, well, he has medical next to him, so he probably has a high chance. Compared to someone in the air gets the exact same wound, a bullet to the ribs. It's like he has no medical next to him. The next time he can get himself checked, hopefully they don't get
If they make
shut
it out.
down if they make it
Yeah.
out, is by the time they come back. And they do tell us like, well, this mission to go all the way over there to do whatever we need to do to come back, that's at least like 5-6 hours. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
So
then even the fact that like some of the missions they planned so precisely that if you screwed up in how you flew, you wouldn't have enough fuel to
yeah,
make it to the next point. Like when they did that thing through to Africa,
yeah,
uh
they had to drop all
like
the equipment.
yeah, like the idea, or like even with the P-51s near the end where they're like, this is basically a one-way flight.
Yeah.
Like that's insane. Insane to think like these are the things. Like I think it was the second episode. Crosby's doing navigation, and he like brings the whole fleet home
Hmm.
basically, and like but one of the guys doesn't have enough fuel and he crashes in Scotland, you know.
Yeah.
They survive, but still crazy. Like, and like we're watching, like he almost hits the Dales. Like he just barely pulls up over it to land, which is crazy.
Yeah. The missions over here, the stakes is you feel it. Like you do feel like you are part of the mission and you are, you realize what's at stake with them. But it's interesting to see how they also lose it. They say like, that's it. This is my last mission. I'm not doing it anymore. It's like, dude, you did only 5 missions. It's like you have 20 more missions to go. It's like, yeah, I'm done. It's like you can't be done. Like you feel how difficult it is on them as well during all these missions. Um, there is an episode where they go to basically have a little break.
Where
Some
they
of
send
them,
them the
yeah,
where
some,
it's a bit of compare and contrast where it's we so the mental fights of the guys who want to go back, but at the same time some of the guys who need like the break, and then at the same time this is when we have the POWs of like
Mhm.
some guys had it nice but they were struggling, and some guys they still couldn't give it up, and they were in the in a running for their life situation, like basically hide and go seek with the enemy until they either became POWs or were freaking just absolutely obliterated by the civilian populace or the Nazis. Like your
Yeah,
chances were low. It
it's insanely low.
controversial episode in terms of like I was watching it. I watched the show with two of my buddies. And when we got to that episode, it was a split between like, did we like it or not like it?
Hmm.
I liked it because I understood what they were doing and I thought they did it pretty decently. It's hard when you have a split narrative and like these guys are doing this, these guys are doing this, and like how much screen time should you show? But I thought
Hmm.
the dialogue was written well enough that it didn't feel like a waste. And it was good to see because again, like we're looking at all war is always complex and there's so many things going left, right, and center. And like these people are doing this and this main character is doing this, but they did all these things, and it's hard to split up, especially when you have such heroes as all these guys that you're seeing in all these mini series that we're watching through Playtone. Like they do a good job though. They have their craft down.
Yeah. No, I was okay with that episode. I didn't mind it. I don't know how necessary was it at the same time.
Mhm.
I do feel they could have gotten rid of that episode and add another episode of more details while they were in prison while they were prisoners. God damn it, my English.
That's
Because
fine.
there is like I think what was it, the last episode or episode 8, they tell us like, yeah, it's been like 8 months now. It's like, well,
Yeah,
you could have shown us more of that a bit. It's like,
maybe. I think though that that's what they were trying to avoid. What your final analysis and say that like a lot of nothing.
mhm,
And I think they were trying to like because they were trying to be very careful about like, okay, how many times do we show them going up in the air? How do we make that exciting? How do we keep that exciting? How do we keep
mhm,
that engaging? And then like they do both where they show okay they show us a few missions, we get how it works and we feel like as the audience okay they're gonna do their thing, get close to bombing, maybe they succeed or not, and then they're gonna engage the enemy, do they live or not? And we see that a few times, and so as the audience we become jaded by nature of how we just consume media. And so then like okay well how do we keep it different but still accurate to history, because of course they could have shown every one of those missions when made the series like 25, 35 episodes long.
mhm,
But then at the same time it's like okay well how do you show the monotonous life of being a POW and hiding from the Nazis and like the stuff that you're doing? There's already the Great Escape and how they started hiding or making stuff, and it's like okay like that stuff is out there, how do we keep it focused? And so they chose to be more, I don't know, characterly driven,
mhm,
especially when near the end, one of our guys ties in to the POW, and we find out the guys who were shot down off screen are, of course, here in this camp. And we watch their escape slash standoff, which is interesting. And there's only so much of that that they can show to, because like out of all the series that have been released, the Pacific and the Band of Brothers, this one's the shortest by one episode.
yeah. Which is
So
interesting
it
why they
tells you
did that.
something. Well, so if we took out the R&R episode, which was important more or less to see Cosby's meeting the English girl,
Hmm.
the English spy that he never knew was a spy.
Yeah.
This just because it's an interesting side. If we took that out, then that's 7 episodes long, and so that means that there wasn't too much material that they could be expanding.
Yeah.
And so it was at least definitely diverse, that episode in particular.
It was. And it was interesting how the guy's like, yeah, I'll just cheat on my wife with this person.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing. Like, then that's another aspect of the show that was interesting, because now we're dealing with pilots and people who quote unquote have options or leave. We can see what they do with their time.
Mhm.
I mean, the options were always available to soldiers more or less when they had their, find a little R&R time, but like here it was more readily available, and we've learned Crosby's hardcore like stress levels and the things that he's doing and the type of person he is. And like in the end, he's also just human.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes sense. Um, shall we jump into the God damn it, imprisonment
The
era?
imprisonment section. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Um,
Absolutely.
so we have a guy who died off screen, which personally, when that happened, I was pissed off.
Yeah.
That I was very pissed off that it was off screen.
That's just lazy.
Exactly, but at the same time, I was like, I was okay. I understand why you had to kill him off because this guy's Austin Butler, and he's in the Dune movie, so he probably didn't have time and all that. It's like I understand why you killed him off. I'm cool with it, but the fact that
Yeah,
you did
but
it off screen, like, come on, you motherfuckers. Uh,
hmm
like I said, I did talk about some of these episodes with Adam on the Hebrew podcast, and he actually changed my mind into like, you know what? I love and I appreciate it a lot more that it was off screen. Now, this is what he said. So, as a viewer, Okay, we get to see everything that happens, right? We get
Hmm.
emotionally connected. But now try to be in the point of view of his family. They don't see what happened. They are already emotionally connected to this person. And then one day a soldier comes to their house and says, your son is dead.
Yeah.
They have no idea. Like, so basically, that is what happened to us. We got emotionally connected to this character, and then someone just came and told us he's dead. We never got to see
Hmm.
it. And it's like, wow. It's interesting because, you know, you literally put me in the parent point of view while watching this, the story of this person. And I loved it. It's very difficult because imagine if, someone comes, to you and says like, "Oh, your son is dead, your friend is dead, or whatever, your husband is dead," and you have hard time accepting it.
Yeah.
I did not accept it. Like
It's
this
just as unsatisfying as it is
exactly,
narratively or
and
like watching in a show, but it
exact
works.
exactly. And when he was dead off screen, I did not accept it. Like this is bullshit. It's like
Yeah.
I don't accept it.
How
Like
dare you fucking kill Buck?
exactly.
I,
And they
I
gave me the exact same, you know, scenario. I know I loved it once Adam
That's a
explained it to
cool
me.
way to look at it. I didn't think about it like that because I kind of guessed. I had a feeling that
Mm,
he didn't actually die,
hmm.
and that because this was still in the time where we hadn't seen the POW stuff yet.
Yeah.
But because if you watch uh the opener, you'll see like some running on ground. I was like, okay, this is like, so me and my friends were throwing like theories out, like where we're going, like where is this going?
Hmm.
Because the whole show can't just be the one lucky team. Like, yeah, sure. Then all episodes are just them flying to the end of the war, but no, that's not what happened. And I
Yeah.
had guessed, that with the little help of the opener, that okay, we're probably gonna watch these guys like get crashed and then have to uh go in the POW or like escape back. I thought that was gonna happen much sooner. Um, but yeah, when Buck gets shot off screen, it's by rule, technically, you're not supposed to do things like that unless you're setting up or like trying to make a surprise, or, it's a cheaper way to do so. However, it's not a bad one if you do it right. And similarly enough, if that's the way that your brother described it, that's a really cool way of looking at it. And I actually really appreciate that. And I'll add that into how I retrospectively look at this series. Um, but in particular, like knowing that when we get to the POW and we finally see Bucky see, or like John, he gets shot down and then him transferred from one prisoner to a camp to another and survives one and runs off, and eventually he gets put in the main one, and then we see Buck there. It's like, oh damn.
Yeah, no, I was watching the show on my phone next to my wife and son. And both of them were sleeping. I'm like, fuck yeah! It's like, oh shit, I woke you guys. He's alive. Yeah, no, there is
Which
a
shows you how
how
endearing they made the characters.
exactly,
Good
exactly. It
casting all
was
around.
they did an amazing job, amazing casting. There is a Hollywood law: if you don't see the character dies, that means he's not dead. So
Probably.
so when they told us he's dead, I was like, okay, he's not dead. There's no way he's dead. And then the next episode came, like we don't see him. It's like, what the fuck is happening over here? Like, did you really kill him off screen? Like, they, I didn't accept it, but they did an amazing job with, all of that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but no, we have Buck and Bucky. I hate that. I hate the fact that they did that. Ooh, what's your name? My name is Buck. And what's your name? Well, my name is Glenn, but you can call me Bucky because you're
Gail, yeah.
Gail. Because because someone else
And it's the other way. The Gale was Buck and John was Bucky.
whatever. It's confusing.
But they had the story behind it. And it's cute and it's probably true. So
It's not cute. This is a story. You look like someone I know from my hometown. I'll call you
it
by
was a
his name.
different. different era back then, dude.
That's not okay. That's lazy writing, as Deadpool
It's
says.
not Levi Rising. That literally will happen. Like these guys made their stories known. So no,
Lazy
no.
writing.
You just they call them lazy. That's so funny. Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, so anyway, so they are now in prison, and I was very like,
Hmm.
how the fuck do the Nazis have all these information on them? Like, oh, we know you live in this place, and this is it. Like, how do you have that kind of information? Like, what?
Yeah, well, spy networks way back in the day and crazy stuff. I'm sure that nowadays it's even more intense.
No, now it's easier. It's like, oh yeah, we just go into your computer IP and we see how many time you masturbated today because you logged in into porn and stuff. So,
Yep.
you know, now it's easier to be a spy. But no,
Apps.
back then, it's like, oh yeah, we know about this, we know about that, we know it's like insane. I was like, what?
Definitely very threatening,
Yeah,
very scary. When people know about you, it's a lot because it's a big power move. So seeing them like, oh yeah, you're a Yankees fan, you're like, oh,
yeah, that's oh God. Anyways, so they tell him like, anyways, you're gonna go to prison. They put him in the train, and then we see another train coming, and we see all the people screaming. Obviously, us as a viewer, we know the situation and what's going on. And
yeah.
we know those are Jews and they are going to be most likely killed and pretty close to 0%
That
of
scene
them
got me.
surviving. That
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 scene got me because
that
they're both in horrible situations, but like even the pilots recognize that that their lot comparatively is totally different.
yeah, and I think that this is the first time for our guys to actually realize what is actually happening in this war. They don't know 100%. Only at
Hmm.
the end of the episode of the last season, the last episode of the season, only one guy actually sees the
Yeah,
truth,
Rosenthal.
and that was like, fuck. It's like I know what you were about to see, but to see you seeing that, it's like
Mm.
that was hard to watch. But yeah, to our pilot sees all these people in the train like screaming help, 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 and like he can't do nothing because if he tries, they'll kill him.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is like you guys are going to die 100%, and he's just going to be a prisoner of war, and he has a chance of survival. It's like two different trains, and one is life, one is death. That is like literally you standing in a hallway. One door is your death, and the other door is life. Which one do you pick? Like it's literally that. Not that they have a choice to pick, but yeah, that was really tough to see. Um, God damn, there was another thing I wanted to say that literally just slipped my mind.
It's okay. We
Yeah,
can edit.
I don't edit anymore. I'm too lazy. Just like these lazy writers.
Oh my goodness. I mean, there was a
Yeah.
lot that was going on there. Like to see people reunite and then like pick up on like, okay, what are we up to? Like, all right, how are we sticking it to the Nazis? Um, one way or another. But it was interesting was like when we a few episodes in when we see that uh in particular that this is during the Great Escape, and then we learn about the aftermath and what happened from the inside of the camp of the rest that were left behind, which was interesting.
Mhm.
But the particular aspect of that they chose to fight by resisting by continued to be there. It's a different mentality than trying to harass the enemy. Um, what we do know strategically is that similar like what they said in the Great Escape is that it's like an airman's job or the RAF in this case, their motto to harass the enemy to make sure that they waste resources on them instead of the front line,
Mhm.
which is what happened with that let's say the Great Escape, like with what happened, like the manhunt for these guys went to a very large scale that it did have a play in the grand scheme of things, which was interesting. But then to see back home these guys like, okay, or back in the base, like on the prison, that like, okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to stick it out, but we're going to try and keep calm. We're going to build our muscle, and we're going to wait for our opportunity to escape. Eventually has to be the death march. Well, it's not a death march, but it's a, is this going to be a death march? And like some of the stuff that they go through. And that was very interesting to see the mentality, like even the Nazi officer having a difficult time with it, and one of the guys helping him, and so on and so forth. Like it's difficult to like comprehend, and it was interesting to see the way the producers and director handled showing that journey and showing how it happened, and being like, okay, like what would you do in that situation? Like you're following along, and yeah, it's really cold where they are, and so that, of course they're going to walk it through, and then they get to some place, no, it's not good enough, and they're telling the officers like get off the road, and one of their own guys shoots at them, and so on and so forth. Like some of the crazy like journeys that happens, like can you see how far they've walked? And like anybody who's had any experience in hiking and understanding the physical exertion under those conditions, understanding that it's nonstop is just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And then we finally get to the last little bit where it's like, okay, they're taking a town and putting these guys in there. Some try to escape. We don't know what happens to them per se. And then, at least from the perspectives of the guys who again remain behind. And then they're at the last prisoner of war camp that finally gets besieged. And it starts off light with the P-51, you know, giving them hell. And you're like, yeah. And then all of a sudden to see the army come out of the woods, and you're like, oh my gosh. And you understand, like, if that's what's happening, that's the end of the war. Like, that's that.
Yeah. So the death march, so there was this like the part of it that when they were marching and the Nazi was like he was having a hard time and he fell, like you said. Like
Mhm.
before they left the first prison camp, dude, you took with you guys a lot of weapons that you know built from wood. You know, you took wood and sharpened it as knives and all that. It's like you marching during the night. Why don't you, as you march, stab one of the Nazis in the neck? He dies and falls, and you guys continue walking. Like I don't know. It's like I saw so many opportunities for them to kill them as they were going, and they didn't. And then here, like the plane cam shoots everyone. It's like, okay, this is your chance of killing an ex, like one more Nazi, and you know you get to survive if you do it right. I don't know. It felt kind of like, why are you helping them? Like you're waiting
Mm.
for something that you don't know when it's going to come. But yeah, then you know they at the last prison camp, and the first thing they notice that is off, they tell him like, "Oh, what? No one is gonna write us that we arrived or something,"
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
realize, okay, something is off. You know, this could be the end of the war. And if I'm not mistaken, it was like a few hours later or a few days later.
Few
That's when,
days. Yeah.
yeah, that's when they came and you know basically helped them, and all the other armies came and saved them, and they put the American flag on, and that was basically the end of the war. But the Nazis had to sign that basically, yes, we agree on this day and this time is the end of the war, and that's it. Yeah, it was.
More or less, or at least that they surrendered the camp.
Yeah, they surrendered the camp. I then we had Buck who went back to he was able to escape, and he was able to go back to his base and come with a plane. Now this is my issue with this scene specifically, and I have to say this because it bothered me so much.
Uh-huh.
So Buck or Elvis, however you want to call him, he was presumed dead for what episode, what was it, 4, 5, 3, 4, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. and
Mm-hmm.
and while they are in prison, they tell us Bucky, it's like, I've been here for 8 months already. It's like, okay, if you've been here for 8 months, that means that Elvis, Buck, Austin Butler, however you want to call him, he's been here for easily over a year. Okay, So for over a year, he's been presumed dead. He then finally goes back to his base. And the first thing, the person that sees him, like, hey, it's been so long. What's up? Like, dude, he's been presumed dead. How about, like, what the fuck? Are you still alive? How is that even possible? Like, no, your first reaction, like, oh my God, it's been so long. What's up? It's like, really? Really? Like, you even thought he was dead. How is that your
It
first
was a little
reaction?
lightheaded at the end.
Exactly. It felt
I
kind
can
of
see
rushed.
that.
Like, okay, let's finish this shit. Let's go back home. Let's finish the show. And I feel like
And that's what they did.
I know, but I feel like it was missing. Like, you guys kind of Game of Thrones this situation. Like, let's finish this already. Like, I don't know. But yeah, that really bothered me. Like, the guy has been
I can understand that.
the guy has been presumed dead for over a year, maybe even close to 2 years. Your first reaction is like, hey, what's up? It's been a while. Like, what? But yeah, no, then he comes with the big plane. He saves everyone. He drops food for all the German civilians, which at the same time, why are you giving the German civilians food? They have food. It's the Jews that don't and the prisoners who don't. Why are you helping them? Like, what's going on over here?
A sign of goodwill.
Fuck goodwill.
Well, remember, Germany surrendered unconditionally, which means like it in all sense and purposes, Germany ceased to exist. The fact that Germany exists today is only by like the how would you say the goodwill of anyone. Like what could have happened is that the lands were divided and Germany ceased to exist. What was Germany would have been divided between the countries surrounding, and like you forfeit your culture, and to like given an extra couple hundred years, German or what's left of the culture and or language might not would cease to exist per se.
Yeah.
But so they kept it in structurally integral, and they allowed a government to be resumed, and and here we are today. And it's an interesting, that whole little aspect. You had the Berlin Wall and all that, like the more
The
conflict,
Berlin
but even
Wall,
then,
the Olympics, what was it, 1978, 1976?
Munich.
Yeah, that.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's not Germans' fault. That was the PLO, but still.
they did nothing.
Yeah, it's true. But still, the point being, like, it's that whole time frame is very, very interesting. But personally, I really like seeing it from the point of view of the pilots, and I like getting to know their stories and in good fashion. One of my favorite things of the show is reading up on the real men, like who did we actually see, and like,
Yes.
oh, these aren't fictitious characters, these are real men and women, and this is what happened to them, and this is what happened after the war, and the little biography after. And I love that. It just feels like there's no other show like that. And I love when Playtone releases stuff like that. And I don't know what if they're ever going to release anything more. They probably will. But I like that they don't push or grind like Disney. They're sensitively, they put it out when they feel it's right, and I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, no, I also love watching, like, okay, let's now show you the real people, and they show us. I do
And
love
this
it.
wasn't a woke piece of shit. Like they actually stuck to historical facts,
Oh
and
my
like,
God, yes.
like they're like, oh, we don't need current day politics invading a good story and or telling what happened. This is what happened, and this is the way it is, and these people were like this, and like this one was like that. There was no like fucking around and being like, oh, this needed diversity, this needed this. Like there was plenty there, and we showed the stories, and it was like, that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, amazing job. I love it when they stay true to the story as much as possible. And don't add any of the any woke agenda. Um,
Huge thumbs
it-
up to Playtone and their balls to do that in this day and age.
yeah, exactly. They did.
I mean, even like Shogun is doing great, but culturally, Japan was a little more open. So, but the thing is, they're not choosing to push that. They're telling the story, which is really cool, which is based off of a book, by the way.
I was just about to say that. I was about to say, I don't know if you know this, it's based on a book.
Yes, but it was based off of the English samurai, Adam Blake, but yeah. Nonetheless. But that's just a tease for our next episodes on Spoilers Only.
And with that, I do believe we got to the end of our episode for today. Unless if there's anything else we need.
I like the show. 100% recommend. 10 out of 10 for me.
Yes.
Like, just I super love Playtone, and I hope they do more. And
well, let's see. We have Band of Brothers, which is paratroopers. Then we have the Pacific, which is land.
Everybody, mortars and riflemen, and
exactly. Then we have this show, Masters of the Air. Now we need something of the ocean. So
the Navy, that makes sense.
There's
that would be plenty of Navy stuff.
Exactly. That would be amazing to watch, because just like Masters of the Air, like, oh, you got shot, whatever, or your airplane has fallen, you're now falling from so many feet to your death. Here is a boat, it's sinking, and now you're stuck in the middle of the ocean. Some of you will survive, some of you won't, some of you will be eaten alive by sharks and stuff. So like that could be a whole story of its own.
Well, I mean, like, or maybe it'll just be a crew on a boat, or like a bunch of boats. But like, there was a recent movie that Tom Hanks did. Tom Hanks,
Dunkirk,
taking it with the that Dunkirk was definitely a Navy thing, but that was a civilian effort. Not Captain Phillips. Greyhound was really good about a ship that was specifically sent out to seek and destroy German U-boats / submarines, which was crazy. Again, World War II was crazy, like seeing these technologies come into play. And there's so many cool stories of like things of like, oh, like the types of radar that existed, and like how the Germans were freaking out, and like of course, like anyways, but like there's plenty of like interesting stories of on sea and sea battles and things of that nature to make things interesting. But if you haven't seen Greyhound, that's for me like a solid 7.3 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10. Like really solid story, really fun. Not the greatest movie in the world, but definitely like sit down and watch and pay attention. It was pretty dope if you like World War II stuff in particular.
I do. I love World War II stuff. I also love World War I stuff that there's not a lot of. I would love I'd love to watch also a lot of World War One. But anyways, like I said, I do believe we got to the end of our episode for today. I'm your host, Joe, and with us, wait. I messed up.
You're the host. No, you said it right.
No, I messed.
I'm your host.
Wait, no, we talked about Masters of the Air season 1.
There.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give us 5 stars on Spotify and all that.
Yeah.
Really
all that spiel.
All that spiel. We are on YouTube. Stuff, guys. We are on YouTube. Only the audio, no video. So if you guys
if someone wants to animate it, you go for it.
I don't know.
Watching that stuff. I don't know if we're that funny though to deserve being animated.
Give us a follow on YouTube, follow us over there, and give us likes over there. Go to every episode, give us a comment. If you guys, ask us questions, we'll answer it on the next episode.
Don't even listen to the show. Just spam like all of it.
Spam your friends. Spam your friends with all of our stuff, and give us your money. Anyways.
All of it. All of your money.
I'm your host, Joel, and with us, Moses Moon.
That's me.
And until then, we'll catch you guys up on the next episode. We are spoilers, obviously. Bye. I burped.
Yeah.